Hey guys, tonight we're going to dive into a world where science, superstition, and the simple act of looking up at the sky were all part of the same toolkit. We're stepping back into the heart of the Middle Ages, not to witness battles or plagues, but to sit in a quiet room with a man who believed he could tell the future by the shape of the clouds. Imagine yourself, not here in your cozy bed, but huddled over a dusty parchment, the only light coming from a flickering tallow candle. The air smells of wood smoke and old leather, and a chill wind rattles the single window pane, threatening to snuff out the flame that you're a young apprentice, no more than 13 years old, and you've been sent to live with a master astrologer, a man known throughout the region as one who can read the heavens. Everyone in your village talks about the stars and planets. Of course, who doesn't? But your master, he's different. He doesn't just read the stars. He reads the clouds. He claims they are the stars' messengers, the visible breath of the celestial spheres themselves. The villagers think he's a genius, others a charlatan. You, to be honest, are still deciding. You probably won't survive this apprenticeship. Not literally, of course. I mean, statistically, medieval apprentices had a, let's call it a not great track record. But in this story, the intellectual challenges and the social tightrope you'll walk will feel just as dangerous. The weight of an entire town's fate could fall on your young shoulders. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. In the comments below, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe. Turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You've been with him for a few months now, and your education has been, to say the least, unconventional. While other apprentices are learning to mix pigments for illuminated manuscripts or to hammer iron at the forge, you spend your days staring at the sky. Your master, a stern but not unkind man named Alaric, is seated across from you now, his long fingers tracing a pattern on the parchment. He points to a sketch he has just made, a simple drawing of a cloud that looks a bit like a flock of sheep grazing in a field. "See this, boy?" he asks, his voice a low rumble. "This is not just water vapor. This is a message." He explains that the most basic premise of his entire system is that the clouds are not just meteorological phenomena. They are a direct, visible manifestation of the unseen forces governing the cosmos. Mainstream medieval thought, as you know, holds that the stars and planets influence events on Earth. That's a fact everyone accepts. The stars' positions at the moment of your birth determine your character. The alignment of Jupiter and Mars can foretell the outcome of a battle. This is a core belief of the era, and it's taught in all the universities, even if they sometimes argue whether these influences are purely physical or more spiritual in nature. But Alaric's theory takes this a step further. He believes that the celestial influences, the very air, so to speak, of the heavens, become tangible when they pass through our atmosphere. They take on a shape, a form. The clouds are the physical handwriting of the planets. This is a fringe tidbit, a quirk of his particular brand of astrology that makes him both famous and suspect. Most astrologers focus on the mathematical calculations, the precise angles of the planets, the exact moment the sun crosses the horizon. Alaric does all that too, of course. You've spent many a cold night squinting through his astrolabe. But his real genius, or madness, depending on who you ask, is that he adds this extra layer of interpretation, a kind of intuitive reading of the sky's ephemeral poetry. He believes that a planet, say, Mars, doesn't just radiate its influence. From its position in the sky, it also causes specific cloud formations to appear. A belligerent, warlike Mars, he tells you, might manifest as sharp, jagged clouds that look like spears or swords. A benevolent Jupiter, on the other hand, would create soft, pillowy clouds that resemble overflowing baskets of grain. Historians still argue whether Alaric's methods were a genuine attempt at scientific inquiry or a cleverly devised smokescreen to lend more gravitas to his predictions. Was he a true believer or just a shrewd showman? You don't know yet, but you're starting to get a glimpse of the intellectual puzzle he's trying to solve. You're learning to see the sky not as a blank canvas, but as a dynamic text, constantly being written and erased before your very eyes. He tells you that your first task is to simply observe. You are to spend the next week documenting every type of cloud you see, noting the time of day, the direction of the wind, and what you feel their mood is. You're to forget what you know about shapes and colors and instead focus on the emotional texture of the sky. Is it angry? Joyful? Melancholy? He tells you to think of it like reading a person's face. You don't just see the nose and the eyes. You read the expression. The clouds, he insists, have expressions. The sky is the face of the universe. He gives you a small, bound notebook and a chunk of charcoal and tells you to begin. You feel a pang of doubt. It sounds so poetic, so unscientific. But then you remember the time last week when he predicted a sudden downpour, not by looking at the weather vane, but by pointing to a specific cloud formation that looked, to your eyes, just like a grumpy old man with a heavy frown. An hour later, the heavens opened up and the master just smiled, a small, knowing smirk that seemed to say, "See? I told you so." You trudge outside, the cold air hitting your face, and you squint up at the vast expanse above you. It's a bit daunting, to be honest. You feel a little like a lost puppy being told to write a symphony. You try to remember a time. You felt this lost, and you think back to when you were a small child, trying to figure out how to tie your shoes. This feels a lot like that. A seemingly simple task, but one that requires a new way of thinking, a complete reprogramming of your brain. You watch a few wispy, high-altitude clouds drift by, and you try to imagine what they are saying. Are they a whisper? A secret? Or just clouds? You scribble a note in your book, trying to capture the feeling of their ethereal drift. Like a ghost, you write, haunting the high heavens. It's a start, you suppose. The week passes in a haze of charcoal-stained fingers and cricked necks. You've filled pages of your small notebook with sketches and half-formed thoughts, trying to describe the indescribable. You have cirrus clouds, which Alaric calls angels' whispers, and cumulus, which he's dubbed Jupiter's bounty. You've even tried to capture the ominous, sprawling shape of a distant cumulonimbus, which he simply calls the fist of God. You haven't just been looking at the shapes, though. You've been forced to consider the clouds' very nature, their texture, their speed, the way they seem to interact with each other, like a silent, slow-motion dance across the stage of the sky. This is not just art, it's an education in seeing. You're starting to understand that the master's method isn't as whimsical as you first thought. It's a rigorous system of observation and classification, built not on mathematical formulas alone, but on a kind of qualitative, almost emotional, assessment of the atmosphere. Today, your master sits you down in his study, the room filled with the scent of old paper and beeswax. He takes your notebook and leafs through it, his brow furrowed in concentration. He points to a sketch you made of a long, thin, high-altitude cloud, so delicate it looked like a feather. You'd written, "A thought lost on the wind." He nods slowly. "Precisely. A thought. A passing idea. No force behind it, no weight. A good omen for a small matter, perhaps a forgotten debt finally repaid. Now what about this?" He gestures to a drawing of a thicker, denser cloud formation you'd seen yesterday. You'd struggled to draw it, to give it weight on the page, and you'd simply written, "like a pile of wool." Alaric chuckles, a dry, rasping sound. "Wool is good. Wool is honest. It is for shearing, for warmth. It is of the earth. I would call that the hand of Venus, holding a gift. It signifies a coming period of peace and plenty, perhaps a successful market day or a happy marriage proposal." Your master then explains the core principle of his entire system, a concept he calls celestial empathy. He believes that every cloud formation has a corresponding celestial body that governs it. The high, feathery cirrus clouds, for example, are influenced by Mercury, the messenger god. They move quickly, they're ephemeral, and they represent fleeting information, gossip, or news from far away. The dense, woolly cumulus clouds are tied to Venus, the goddess of love and fertility. They are slow, full, and promising, often signaling a time of growth and prosperity. The sharp, jagged clouds that look like spears or rocks. Those are Mars, obviously. They represent conflict, aggression, and potential violence. These aren't just allegorical. To Alaric, this is a physical, observable reality. The very air is charged with the energies of the planets, and the clouds are how that energy manifests to a keen observer. This is a fringe tidbit that sets him apart from most of his contemporaries. While a mainstream historical fact of the era is that astrologers would cast a horoscope by the positions of the planets and stars, they would rarely, if ever, incorporate the transient forms of the clouds into their predictions. They considered clouds to be a mere meteorological nuisance, an obstruction to their view of the heavens. Alaric, however, sees them as a secondary, almost more intimate, layer of the cosmic message. The planets set the stage, but the clouds are the actors delivering the lines. He believes that a skilled astrologer can use the clouds to fine-tune a prediction, to add nuance and specificity that the stars alone cannot provide. That he then tells you that the next step is to combine these two levels of observation. You must not only identify the cloud type and its governing planet, but you must also cross-reference it with the actual position of that planet in the sky. If you see a Mars cloud, a sharp, aggressive formation, at a time when the planet Mars itself is high and dominant in the heavens, that prediction of conflict is amplified. It becomes a certainty. If, however, the Mars cloud appears when the planet Mars is weak or setting, the prediction is softened. It might not be a physical battle, but perhaps just a heated argument between neighbors. This fusion of macro, the planets, and micro, the clouds, is the heart of his art. Historians still argue whether this practice was born of intellectual innovation or sheer necessity. Did Alaric develop this system because he was a genius, or because he lived in a region so often overcast that he had to find a way to make predictions even when the stars were hidden? It's a good question, and one you probably wouldn't think of in this moment. To you, it's just a lot to remember. You find yourself thinking of a simpler time, when a cloud was just a cloud, a fluffy white thing that looked a bit like a cat or a dog. Now, every time you look up, it's a test. Is that a Venus cloud? Is that Mercury? It's like being forced to learn a new language, one where the alphabet is made of water vapor and light. Alaric then sets you your first real challenge. Tomorrow, he says, we will observe the sky from sunrise to sunset. I want you to tell me, using only the clouds, what the day will bring. Will it be a good day for the market? A bad day for hunting? Will there be news from the capital? He hands you a fresh piece of parchment and a quill. Write it down. And don't just write what you think I want to hear. Write what the sky is truly saying to you. The clouds don't lie, boy. Only men do. You feel a knot in your stomach. A single day's prediction. It sounds simple, but you know how much can change. A sudden rainstorm, a break in the weather, the arrival of a merchant with bad news. It all feels so fragile. But as you walk to your small room for the night, you glance out the window at the moonlit sky, and for the first time, you don't just see clouds. You see shapes. You see stories. You see the whisper of Mercury and the slow, deliberate promise of Venus. And you wonder, just for a moment, if maybe, just maybe, Alaric isn't so mad after all. You spend the next morning with your neck craned back, a piece of charcoal clutched in your numb fingers. It's a clear, crisp day, unusually so for this time of year, and the clouds are sparse, little puffs of white against the relentless blue. You're trying to remember everything Alaric taught you. The height of the clouds, their speed, their density. You see a few small, wispy cirrus clouds high up, looking like faint brushstrokes on the canvas. These, you recall, are Mercury clouds. They represent news, travel, and fleeting information. You jot down a note. News from the north. Then, you see a single, small, fluffy cumulus cloud that looks like a little lamb. Ah, a Venus cloud. Peace and prosperity. You write, a small blessing. Perhaps a good trade. The sun climbs higher, and the sky becomes almost blinding. The clouds seem to evaporate in the heat, leaving a blank, unreadable expanse. This, you think, is a bad sign. A blank sky, Alaric has told you, is a sky that is keeping its secrets. It represents a period of stagnation, of things remaining just as they are. No good news, but no bad news either. Just nothing. You feel a pang of disappointment. You had hoped for a clear, decisive message, not this cosmic shrug. You note it down, no change. Stagnation in the afternoon. Late in the day, as the sun begins its slow descent, a new set of clouds appears on the horizon. They are low and gray, and they seem to be moving quickly, pushed by a strong breeze. They don't have a distinct shape. They are just a vast, formless smear of gray. This is a difficult one. Alaric hasn't specifically shown you this type yet, but you remember a conversation you overheard between him and a traveling merchant. The merchant had asked Alaric what a bad omen looked like, and Alaric had pointed to the sky, to a similar cloud formation, and said, "A sky that has forgotten its shape is a sky that has forgotten its purpose. It is aimless, and aimlessness breeds trouble." So you write, trouble from the west. Perhaps a storm, or a disagreement. You add a question mark. Unsure of your own deduction, you present your parchment to Alaric that evening. He takes it and reads your notes, a small smile playing on his lips. News from the north, a good trade, and trouble from the west. He says, reading your words out loud. An interesting day, if your predictions hold true. The next few days are your first real test. A traveler from a northern village arrives, bringing news of a new tax levied by the local lord. Not great news, but certainly news from the north. The following morning, a local farmer tells you his prize-winning pig, which he had feared lost, was found grazing peacefully in a nearby field. A small blessing, a good trade in the sense of not having to buy a new pig. And then, 2 days later, a storm does indeed blow in from the west, bringing with it not just a deluge of rain, but also a heated argument at the tavern over a game of dice. The town's bailiff has to break it up. Trouble from the west, indeed, your predictions, while not perfectly precise, have been eerily accurate in their general tenor. You've had your first success, and it's a heady feeling. You are starting to believe. But you also had a failure, a small one, that Alaric points out to you. You wrote of a stagnation in the afternoon, he says, tapping your parchment. But did you not see the hawk flying high, circling in the blank sky? You shake your head, embarrassed. You had been so focused on the clouds, you'd forgotten to look for anything else. The hawk, he explains, is a creature of Mars, but a Mars of ambition, not aggression. He is a hunter. He soars. The blank sky was not empty, boy. It was a canvas waiting for action. The hawk's presence meant someone's ambition was about to take flight. A merchant set out on a journey that afternoon. Did he not? He seeks to make his fortune. You remember a peddler leaving town, a man you'd completely forgotten about. Your master, of course, had seen him. This is a mainstream historical fact of the time. While most people believe that astrologers simply look at the stars, the truth is that a good astrologer was a keen observer of everything around them. They would take into account not just the celestial movements, but also the flight of birds, the behavior of animals, the direction of the wind, and the gossip of the town square. Everything was a sign, a piece of the puzzle. An astrologer's job was as much about intuition and social intelligence as it was about mathematics. They were, in a way, the original data analysts, just with a very different set of data. This quirky tidbit about the hawk, and the idea of a blank sky not being truly blank, is a nuance your master's method adds. It's a level of detail that elevates his predictions from a simple forecast to a deep reading of the moment. He explains that even an empty sky has a message. It's a message of potential, of waiting. It is not an absence of meaning, but a canvas on which new meaning can be written. You're learning that this is a system with infinite layers, and you have only scratched the surface. Historians still argue whether the success of these predictions was due to genuine insight or simply a form of confirmation bias. Did Alaric's predictions come true because he was a master of his craft, or did people simply find a way to make his vague prophecies fit whatever happened to them? The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. But to you, a young boy with a new sense of purpose, it feels like magic. You have just looked at a piece of sky and seen the future. And for the first time, you feel like you belong here. You are not just Alaric's apprentice. You are a cloud reader. Your small successes have given you a newfound confidence. But you soon learn that predicting the weather is one thing. Predicting the whims of a powerful patron is another entirely. Alaric's reputation, you discover, is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it brings him a steady stream of clients, merchants seeking auspicious dates for journeys, farmers hoping for a forecast of the coming seasons, and even young lovers wanting to know if their match is blessed by the stars. On the other hand, it also brings him to the attention of people for whom a failed prediction is not a mere inconvenience, but a matter of life and death, or at least of a comfortable life versus a very short, uncomfortable one. You've heard the stories of astrologers who promised a victory in battle only to see their lord defeated, and who subsequently found their heads separated from their bodies, a very permanent kind of performance review. You realize your master is not just a scholar. He is a courtier, a diplomat, and a shrewd judge of character. He understands that a prediction is not just a statement of fact, but a carefully worded piece of advice, tailored to the temperament of the person receiving it. You witness this firsthand when a local baron, a burly man with a temper as fiery as his red beard, arrives at your master's study. He wants to know if he should go to war with a neighboring lord over a disputed piece of land. The baron lays out his problem with a mixture of bluster and desperation. He wants Alaric to tell him the stars are in his favor, that victory is assured. He wants a Mars cloud, a big, angry one. But Alaric, before he even looks at the sky chart, takes the measure of the man. He sees the greed in his eyes, the fear of appearing weak, and the fact that his troops are probably not as well equipped as he pretends. He takes you outside, and you both look up at the sky. It's a mix of different cloud types, a bit of everything. There's a high, wispy Mercury cloud, suggesting communication. There are some softer, rounder Venus clouds, hinting at a peaceful resolution. And yes, there is a distant, sharp-edged Mars cloud, but it's small, and it's being pushed away by a larger, slower Saturn cloud. Saturn, the planet of time, patience, and restriction. You see it, and you're ready to tell the Baron that he should hold off on the war. But Alaric gives you a subtle shake of his head. He knows the Baron will not be swayed by a call for patience. He wants a sign of strength, a reason to fight. So Alaric, instead of focusing on the peaceful Venus clouds or the patient Saturn cloud, gestures dramatically to the distant Mars cloud. "My lord," he says, his voice a somber whisper. "The heavens speak of conflict. A sharp, quick struggle. A Mars cloud. Yes, but look, it is small and quickly fading. It is a sign that if you are to engage, it must be with speed and decisiveness. Do not let this moment pass, or the slow, heavy hand of Saturn will descend upon you, binding you in a long and costly struggle." It's a brilliant piece of verbal acrobatics. Alaric hasn't lied. He's simply emphasized one part of the celestial message while downplaying the others. He has given the Baron the confidence to act, but he has also given him a warning: act quickly or face ruin. It's a prediction that is almost guaranteed to be at least partially correct. If the Baron wins quickly, Alaric is a genius. If he gets bogged down in a long conflict, Alaric can say, "I told you to be swift." Either way, the astrologer is safe. This brings you to a mainstream historical fact of the era. Astrologers, especially court astrologers, were often more valued for their political acumen than their scientific precision. They were trusted advisors who used their knowledge of the stars not just to predict the future, but to shape it. They advised kings and queens on everything from marriage alliances to military campaigns. Their power was immense, but so was their peril. This quirky tidbit about Alaric's method is the way he manipulates the interpretation of the clouds to suit the personality of his client. He sees the clouds not as a single, static message, but as a complex text with multiple interpretations. He then chooses the interpretation that is most likely to produce the best outcome for him, and, hopefully, for his client. He isn't just reading the sky. He's reading the people who look to the sky for answers. Historians still argue whether this kind of manipulation was a betrayal of the astrologer's duty or a necessary part of survival in a volatile political landscape. Were they charlatans or simply pragmatic men navigating a world where the line between prophecy and politics was incredibly thin? You are starting to suspect the latter. The Baron, emboldened, thanks Alaric profusely and leaves. Alaric turns to you, a weary look on his face. "You see, boy," he says, "the sky is a mirror. People don't want to see what is there. They want to see what they want to see. Your job is to show them a reflection they can live with, a reflection that doesn't get your head cut off." He then gives you a gentle push toward the door. "Now go. Go and draw the clouds as they truly are, not as some fat baron wishes they were." The Baron's visit, and your master's clever handling of it, has opened your eyes to the layers of his craft. It's not enough to simply see the clouds. You must also understand their deeper, more symbolic meanings. Today, Alaric decides to formalize this knowledge. He lays out a large piece of parchment on the table, and with a fine-tipped pen, he begins to draw. At the center, he draws a crude sun. Around it, he places the planets: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. He explains that these are the five wanderers, the stars that move and, therefore, exert a changing influence on the world. You've seen this before, of course. It's the basis of all astrology. But now, he adds a new layer to the diagram, a kind of celestial key. Next to each planet, he draws the clouds it governs. For Mercury, he draws a handful of thin, streaky cirrus clouds, the angel's whispers you've come to know. He explains their meaning again, but with more detail. They signify quickness, communication, and intellect. He writes down keywords next to the drawing: news, merchants, students, travel. For Venus, he draws the soft, fluffy cumulus clouds. The Jupiter's bounty, you remember. No, wait, he corrects himself. Those are actually governed by Jupiter. The Venus clouds are softer still, more amorphous, like a gentle haze that diffuses the sun's light. These, he says, represent beauty, love, and fertility. He writes down marriage, harvests, peace, art. You start to see the nuance. A cumulus cloud is indeed a Venus cloud, but a particularly lush, full one is also influenced by Jupiter, the great benefic, the planet of abundance. Jupiter, he explains, is the planet of expansion and good fortune. Its clouds are the big, pillowy, glorious formations that resemble mountains of whipped cream. They represent growth, wealth, and general good luck. His keywords are kings, blessings, wealth, philosophy. Then he draws the Mars clouds. These are the ones you know well, the sharp, jagged, angry-looking clouds. They are the harbinger of strife. Keywords: war, conflict, aggression, surgery. You remember how he cleverly used the small Mars cloud to manipulate the Baron. He then draws the Saturn cloud, the one that represents time and restriction. These clouds are low, flat, and gray, often covering the entire sky like a heavy blanket. They move slowly and deliberately. Keywords: patience, delay, discipline, old age. This is the core of his system, a bizarre and beautiful fusion of classical astronomy and pure, intuitive observation. He has created his own taxonomy of the clouds, a new layer on top of the traditional astrological charts. A mainstream historical fact of the era is that astrologers would often use these same planetary associations. Venus was love, Mars was war, Jupiter was fortune. But Alaric's quirky tidbit is the way he makes these abstract concepts tangible. He doesn't just say, Venus is in a good house for a harvest. He says, the Venus clouds are abundant and full. The harvest will be plentiful. He gives the sky a visible, physical voice that he explains that the true skill lies in the combination. You do not see a Mars cloud and predict war, nor a Venus cloud and predict love, he explains. You see how they interact. A Mars cloud cutting through a Venus cloud might mean a conflict that ends a love affair, or a fight over a harvest. A Jupiter cloud pushing a Saturn cloud away means that fortune will eventually overcome a period of difficulty. He makes you practice this by drawing two clouds and asking you to interpret their interaction. You draw a small Mercury cloud and a big, heavy Saturn cloud. News of a delay, you say? A message that is slow to arrive. He nods, a rare show of approval. Historians still argue whether this kind of systematic classification was a genuine attempt to create a new scientific discipline or simply a form of intellectual game. Was Alaric's system repeatable? Could another astrologer, given the same rules, arrive at the same conclusions? It's a question that you're starting to answer for yourself. You're beginning to see the sky through his eyes, to speak his strange language. A few months ago, a cloud was just a cloud. Now, it is a sentence. And you, Alaric's apprentice, are learning to read it. Now that you have a theoretical framework for Alaric's cloud-based astrology, he decides it's time to introduce you to the physical tools of the trade. You are, after all, an astrologer's apprentice, not just a cloud gazer. The tools aren't elaborate by any stretch, but in his hands, they become instruments of cosmic observation. He brings out a small, worn leather pouch and carefully unties the drawstring, revealing a handful of objects. The first is an astrolabe, a beautiful, complex instrument of engraved brass that looks like a miniature universe. You've seen it before, but you've only ever really used it to get your bearings on a clear night. Alaric explains its true purpose: to measure the altitude of celestial bodies and to determine the time. This is a mainstream historical fact of the era. The astrolabe was a medieval Swiss army knife for scholars, used for everything from telling time to charting the stars. It was a tool of navigation, astronomy, and, of course, astrology. Alaric shows you how to hold it steady, to align the alidade, the rotating arm, with a star, and to read the markings on the mater, the main disk. This is how you get your foundational data, the hard numbers that ground all of Alaric's more ethereal observations. The astrolabe tells you where Mars and Venus are actually located in the sky, which in turn helps you confirm which clouds are messengers from which planet. Next, he pulls out a small, polished silver disc with a hole in the center. He holds it up, and you see your distorted reflection. This, he says, is a nebulometer. You've never heard of such a thing. It's a completely fringe, Alaric-specific tidbit. He explains that you are to hold it up to the sky and look through the small hole. The polished surface, he claims, helps you see the clouds in a different way, stripping away the distraction of the sun's glare and allowing you to focus on the subtleties of the cloud's shapes and movements. It's a bit like looking at a reflection in a calm pool of water, he says, allowing you to see the true nature of the thing without the surrounding chaos. It's a weird, quirky tool, but as you try it, you realize it does indeed force you to focus, to see the cloud as an entity separate from the overwhelming expanse of the sky. He also shows you a simple wind vane, not the ornate rooster on a rooftop, but a small, carefully balanced feather on a pivot. He uses this not just to tell the direction of the wind, but to gauge its mood. A gentle, steady breeze is a sign of Jupiter's calm influence, he says. A sudden, blustery gust is a sign of Mars's impatience. He's not just interested in where the wind is coming from. He's interested in how it feels. And finally, there's your small notebook and charcoal. He stresses that this is perhaps the most important tool of all. It is where you record your observations, where you capture the fleeting moments of the sky, before they disappear forever. He shows you his own notebooks, filled with decades of drawings and notes, a rich tapestry of sky watching that forms the foundation of his entire belief system. He emphasizes the importance of meticulous record-keeping. You're not just an astrologer. You're a historian of the sky. Historians still argue whether Alaric's peculiar tools were genuinely useful aids to observation or simply psychological props, designed to lend an air of authority and mystery to his predictions. Did the nebulometer actually help him see the clouds more clearly, or did it just convince his clients that he had a unique, secret knowledge they could never possess? The truth, you suspect, is a bit of both. The tools, in a way, force you to slow down, to be deliberate, to engage with the sky on a deeper level. He tells you that for the next week, you are to use these tools every day. You are to take a reading with the astrolabe every 2 hours, chart the wind with the feather, and use the nebulometer to make detailed sketches of every cloud formation you see. You are to combine these observations in your notebook, creating a complete picture of the sky's message. The tools, he says, are an extension of your own senses, but they are worthless without a mind to interpret what they show you. He then gives you a stern look. And never, ever, let a patron see the nebulometer. It is for your eyes only. They must believe your skill comes from your mind, not from a trinket. You feel a thrill of excitement. You're no longer just a boy staring at the sky. You are a craftsman, a scholar, a keeper of secrets. You have a kit, a bag of tricks, a little universe of your own that helps you see the big one. And as you step outside, with your astrolabe in one hand and your notebook in the other, you feel the weight of a new responsibility, a sense that you are on the cusp of something truly important. The time has come for your most important prediction yet. The village's livelihood, and indeed the surrounding regions, depends on the annual harvest. A good harvest means full granaries, healthy livestock, and happy, well-fed people. A bad one means hardship, hunger, and perhaps even famine. The local abbot, a stern man with a kind face, has commissioned Alaric to give a prediction for the coming year's crop yield. He doesn't want a vague answer. He wants a clear, actionable forecast. Will the rains come? Will the sun be too hot? Will the pests arrive in force? Alaric, knowing the stakes are high, tasks you with this observation. He tells you that your previous successes were mere practice. This is the real test. He sends you out into the fields just after dawn with your astrolabe and notebook. He tells you to make a full sweep of the sky from east to west and to observe not just the clouds, but the very feel of the air. You spend the entire day in the fields. The air is warm and still. In the morning, you see a magnificent display of Jupiter clouds. They are huge, white, and pillowy, floating serenely high in the sky. To your eye, they look like enormous, fluffy cauliflowers, a perfect symbol of abundance and growth. You use your astrolabe to confirm that Jupiter itself is high in the sky, in an auspicious position in the house of agriculture. You make a detailed sketch of the clouds and write down your observation, Jupiter's promise of plenty. This is a strong start, but then, as the day wears on, the Jupiter clouds begin to dissipate. They give way to a different kind of formation, small, scattered clouds that look a bit like fish scales. You remember Alaric mentioning these. They are a sign of Mercury, a different kind of Mercury than the high, wispy ones. This is a Mercury of commerce and exchange. You note this down as a quick sale, a fast trade. The most important observation of all comes late in the afternoon. On the western horizon, you see a line of low, gray Saturn clouds. They're not angry or aggressive, they're just heavy. They look like a long, leaden shelf, slowly moving east. You check the sky with your astrolabe again, and to your dismay, Saturn is also on the horizon, in a house that Alaric has taught you. Means restriction and binding. This isn't a good sign. Saturn is the planet of patience, yes, but also of hardship and delay. The clouds look like they are holding something back, a great weight pressing down on the fields. You write down Saturn's weight, a delay in the reaping. You return to Alaric that evening, feeling both excited and nervous. The Jupiter clouds were so promising, but the Saturn clouds were so foreboding. How do you interpret such a conflicting message? Alaric takes your notes, reads them carefully, and then smiles. This is not a simple message, is it, boy? He asks. This is not yes or no. This is the sky being a poet, not a simple farmer. He explains that a mainstream historical fact of the time is that crop failures were a constant threat, and predictions were often a blend of hope and practicality. An astrologer couldn't just predict a bumper crop and hope for the best. They had to give actionable advice. Alaric's quirky tidbit is the way he synthesizes your conflicting observations into a nuanced prediction that he tells the abbot. The heavens promise a good harvest, a bounty of Jupiter's grace. The clouds in the morning were full of this promise. But, he says, gesturing to your drawing of the Saturn cloud, there is a delay coming. The final growth will be slow, and the reaping will be harder than usual. The harvest will be good, but only if the people are patient and work twice as hard to bring it in. The clouds speak of a great effort required to bring this bounty to fruition. This is a brilliant interpretation. He hasn't promised an easy time. He's promised a successful one, but only if the villagers are prepared to work for it. It's a prediction that can't really fail. If the harvest is good, he's a genius. If it's merely average, he can say, see, the Saturn clouds proved true, and the people did not work hard enough. It's a classic astrologer's move. Historians still argue whether the success of such predictions was due to genuine meteorological insight or simply clever manipulation of human psychology. Did Alaric's forecast give the farmers a sense of purpose and a will to work harder, thereby making the prediction a self-fulfilling prophecy? The answer, you're beginning to understand, is probably a bit of both. You are not just predicting the future, you are helping to create it. And as you watch the farmers return to the fields with renewed vigor, you realize the true power of your craft. Your success with the harvest prediction cements your master's reputation, and by extension, your own. He is hailed as a wise man, and the abbot's gratitude is tangible in the form of extra food provisions and a new, thicker blanket for your bed. But with rising fame comes rising competition. Word of Alaric's unique methods has reached the ears of other astrologers, and not all of them are impressed. One day, a visiting scholar from a distant monastery arrives. He is a man named Brother Thomas, and he carries with him a library of scrolls and a reputation for being a master of traditional mathematical astrology. He is a man of numbers, angles, and precise calculations. He believes in the hard science of the heavens, not in the poetic nonsense of clouds. He is, to put it lightly, a snob. He has come to challenge Alaric, not to a duel with swords, but to a duel of wits. He sits across from you and Alaric in the study, his hands resting primly on the table. He speaks with an air of condescending confidence. Your predictions are clever, old man, he says, but they lack precision. You speak of a slow delay and a bounty of Jupiter's grace. I can tell you the exact moment the sun will rise and the precise degree of a planet's ascension. These clouds of yours are mere weather. They are a distraction from the true work of the heavens. Alaric, unruffled, simply smiles. The clouds, Brother Thomas, are the handwriting of the heavens, not the simple numbers on a page. The numbers tell you where the planets are. The clouds tell you what they are thinking. This is where you step in. Alaric, in a moment of inspired showmanship, tells Brother Thomas that his apprentice will provide a prediction based on the clouds, and that Thomas will provide one based on his charts. They will then see which is more accurate. Your heart sinks into your stomach. This isn't just about a prediction anymore. It's about a defense of your entire craft. You and Alaric spend the next 2 days observing the sky. You use your nebulometer and wind vane, meticulously recording every detail. You see a low, gray band of clouds, the dreaded Saturn clouds, moving in, but you also see a break in them, a small patch of clear sky where the sun shines through. It's a complicated message. Your master tells you that a mainstream historical fact of the era is that scholarly debates were a common and brutal form of intellectual combat. A man's reputation could be made or broken in such a contest. This is not just a disagreement. It is a battle for intellectual supremacy. Meanwhile, Brother Thomas is buried in his scrolls, his astrolabe, and his tables. He is working with pure data, with no room for interpretation. He is calculating the position of every planet, every star, every known celestial body. He is, in a way, trying to remove all human error from the equation. He is trying to make astrology a science in the way we might understand it today, purely objective, purely mathematical. Your quirky tidbit is the way Alaric insists on the emotional and symbolic interpretation of the clouds. He tells you to focus on the mood of the clouds, not just their shape. That gray band of Saturn clouds. It's not just a sign of delay. It is, he says, a sign of weariness. The small patch of sun breaking through, that is hope. Your prediction, therefore, is not about a specific event, but about a feeling, a time of weariness and stagnation, but with a small, unexpected burst of hope. Historians still argue whether the debate between Alaric and Thomas represents a fundamental divide in medieval thought. Was it a clash between the intuitive, observational approach and the purely mathematical one? Or were they both simply using different tools to arrive at the same conclusion? You are starting to suspect they are two sides of the same coin, each with their own biases. The day of the revelation arrives. Brother Thomas stands up, a triumphant look on his face. The stars are clear, he declares. Saturn is in a dominant position, and the moon is in a difficult house. This is a day of delay. No good will come of any new endeavor. You stand up, your voice shaking slightly. The clouds tell a different story, you say. They speak of a period of weariness and delay, yes, but also of a small and unexpected moment of hope, a brief glimpse of light. Later that day, a merchant arrives. He was indeed delayed, his cart getting stuck in the mud on the road. The Saturn clouds were right. But then, as he was despairing, a passing nobleman, a man he had never met, helped him pull the cart out and, in a moment of generosity, offered to buy his entire stock for a fair price. The nobleman even gave him a small pouch of coins. An unexpected burst of hope. The small patch of sun. Alaric smiles at Brother Thomas, a gentle, knowing smirk. The numbers were right, he says. But the clouds were more honest. They told us the whole story, not just the beginning of it. Brother Thomas's departure leaves a different kind of silence in the study, one filled with a quiet victory. But the rivalry has sparked a new conversation in the community, a deeper intellectual and spiritual inquiry. The townsfolk, who once simply accepted Alaric's predictions, are now asking questions. How can clouds, mere weather, be a sign from God? Is it blasphemous to try and read the heavens without relying on the sacred texts? You and Alaric are forced to confront the tension between your scientific observations and the prevailing religious beliefs of the era. One afternoon, a young priest from the local parish comes to visit a man known for his theological studies. He is not confrontational like Brother Thomas. He is genuinely curious and concerned. Master Alaric, he asks, I must confess, your skill is undeniable. But I am troubled. Does not the Lord alone know the future? Are we not treading on sacred ground by trying to divine it from the sky, from mere water vapor? Alaric, a man who has clearly considered this question his entire life, is not caught off guard. He gestures for the priest to sit and then begins to explain his philosophy, a philosophy he has been subtly teaching you all along. He tells the priest that his work is not about challenging God's will. It is about listening to it. He believes that God, in his infinite wisdom, created a universe of interconnected systems. The stars, the planets, the earth, and yes, even the clouds, are all part of a grand design, a divine symphony. To study the clouds is not to challenge God's power, but to better understand his creation. This is a mainstream historical fact of the era. Many medieval scholars and astrologers saw no contradiction between their work and their faith. They believed that by studying the universe, they were studying the mind of God. Astrology was often seen as a legitimate, God-given tool for understanding the world. The line between science and religion was often blurred, and a man could be both a devout Christian and a committed astrologer. The priest listens, his brow furrowed in concentration. Alaric's quirky tidbit is the way he frames the clouds as a form of divine communication. The clouds, he says, are like parables. They are not the direct word of God, but they are a physical manifestation of his will, a sign given to those who have the eyes to see it. It is no different from reading a passage in the Holy Bible. The words are not God himself, but they contain his truth. The clouds are the same. He then takes you outside and points to a majestic, towering cumulus cloud, a truly glorious sight. He tells the priest that this cloud is a sign of Jupiter's grace, of God's abundant generosity. Does this cloud not fill you with a sense of wonder and hope? Alaric asks the priest, does it not make you feel that all is well with the world? This is a feeling, a message that is undeniable. My work is simply to give this feeling a name, a time, and a place. Historians still argue whether medieval astrologers like Alaric were truly pious men or if they simply used religious language to make their practices more palatable to a deeply Christian society. Was Alaric's explanation a genuine expression of his faith or a clever piece of intellectual self-preservation? You are starting to suspect it is a bit of both. Alaric genuinely seems to believe in the sacred nature of the sky, but he is also a shrewd man who knows how to survive. The priest leaves, his mind clearly at ease. He has not become a believer in cloud astrology, but he has become a friend to it. He understands that Alaric's work is not a rejection of faith, but an extension of it. He has seen the beauty in it, and he has seen the devotion. And you, Alaric's apprentice, have learned another valuable lesson. The true master is not just a scholar of the stars, but a scholar of the human heart, one who knows how to speak to people's deepest hopes and fears, even when those hopes and fears are tied to their faith. You realize that your apprenticeship is not just about the heavens, but about the world itself. The conversation with the priest, a dialogue of faith and science, has shown you that Alaric's knowledge, though rooted in the local landscape, could be universal. He is not just a prophet for your small village. He is a scholar in a much larger world. Alaric, always one to seize an opportunity for learning, decides it's time to travel. There is a great library in a distant city, a place where manuscripts from the Roman and Byzantine empires are said to be preserved, where scholars from all over the known world gather to debate and share knowledge. He wants to see if anyone else has developed a system like his, or if his unique cloud reading is an isolated intellectual quirk. He wants to compare his findings, to test his theories against the established wisdom of the ages. You are, of course, to accompany him. Your first journey outside the small valley you've always called home. You pack your meager belongings, your notebook, your charcoal, and the nebulometer you still find a bit strange. The journey is long and arduous, a mainstream historical fact of the time. Travel was slow, dangerous, and expensive. You travel by foot, then by cart, and then by river barge, each leg of the journey exposing you to new landscapes, new accents, and new ways of thinking. You see the vast, open plains, the thick, dark forests, and the endless ribbon of the river, all with new eyes. You are no longer just an apprentice. You are an observer, a student of the world. Your master, ever the teacher, uses the journey itself as a series of lessons. He points to the different cloud formations you see in different regions. He notices how the high, thin air of the mountains creates different cloud types than the humid air of the river valley. He refines his theories on the fly, adding new notes to his own journals. He teaches you how to interpret the clouds of a region not just for a day's weather, but for the very character of the place itself. A place with many low, fast-moving clouds, he says, is a place of quick commerce and change. A place with big, slow-moving Jupiter clouds is a place of deep-rooted wealth and tradition. This is his quirky tidbit, the application of his cloud. Astrology not just to the future, but to the very essence of a location. It's a kind of cosmic geography. Historians still argue whether medieval scholars truly believed that different regions had different celestial characters, or if this was just a convenient way to explain cultural differences. Did they believe the sky over Italy was inherently more passionate than the sky over England? Alaric, you suspect, believes it with all his heart. He sees the sky as a living, breathing entity, a reflection of the earth below. When you finally arrive at the city, you are overwhelmed. The sheer size of it, the noise, the smells, the endless streams of people. The library itself is a wonder, a vast hall filled with shelves of scrolls and books. Alaric, however, is not here for the books. He is here for the people. He attends a series of debates and lectures, listening to scholars from all over the world argue about the nature of the cosmos. He listens to them debate the merits of Ptolemy and Aristotle, the positions of the planets, and the influence of the zodiac. He takes it all in, but he is a man apart. He meets with other astrologers, men who scoff at his reliance on clouds. They show him their charts, their tables, their precise calculations, and they tell him he is a fool. But then, in a quiet corner of the library, he finds a man, a weathered old monk from a remote mountain monastery, who also looks at the sky differently. The monk doesn't read clouds, but he reads the flight of birds, the shape of tree branches, and the way the light falls on the water. He has his own fringe tidbit, his own unique way of reading the world. Alaric and the monk spend hours talking, comparing notes, and you realize that your master is not alone. There are others out there who see the world as a book of signs, a rich tapestry of messages waiting to be read. Your journey has not just expanded your knowledge, it has expanded your world. You have seen that your master's craft is not an isolated piece of madness, but one thread in a much larger tapestry of human inquiry. And you have seen that true wisdom comes not from memorizing old books, but from looking at the world with fresh eyes, from asking new questions, and from finding new ways to read the story of the sky. The journey home is a quiet, contemplative affair, the great conjunction still fresh in your mind. But the quiet does not last. As you arrive back in your village, you find it in a state of nervous anticipation. The king, a man of great power, but also of great age, has fallen ill. His royal court has sent for Alaric, not just for a simple prediction, but for a critical one. Will the king survive? The entire kingdom holds its breath. His death would plunge the realm into a bitter succession. Crisis. A period of peace and stability hangs on Alaric's words. The stakes have never been higher. Alaric, as he always does, sends you out to the highest hill in the village, telling you that this time, he will observe with you. You both sit, your knees tucked up to your chest, looking up at the sky. It is a gray, overcast day, the sun a pale, sickly disk behind a thick layer of clouds. This is a difficult sky to read, a sky of uncertainty and melancholy. You see the clouds are low and flat, the signature of Saturn, the planet of old age, illness, and death. There are no great, pillowy Jupiter clouds of health and abundance. There are no sharp, aggressive Mars clouds of a sudden, quick end. It is just gray, a slow, grinding, heavy gray. It looks, to your eye, like a funeral shroud. But then, Alaric points to something you almost missed. High above the Saturn clouds, a few thin, Wispy clouds are trying to break through. They are difficult to see, like a faint, hopeful ghost. These, he explains, are not Mercury clouds. They are not Jupiter clouds. They are Venus clouds, but a kind you have never seen before. They are the Venus of hope, of life, and of healing, but they are struggling. They are fighting to be seen through the heavy weight of Saturn. This is a mainstream historical fact of the era. The health and destiny of a monarch were a constant source of anxiety, and astrologers were routinely called upon to make predictions about them. Their success or failure in these matters could literally make or break their careers. They were, in effect, the royal prognosticators, a kind of ancient medical consultant, with the sky as their diagnostic tool. That Alaric's quirky tidbit is the way he reads this specific interplay between the Saturn and Venus clouds. He doesn't just see sickness or health. He sees a fight. He sees two forces, life and death, locked in a slow, cosmic struggle. He tells you that the Venus clouds, though faint, are there. They are not disappearing. They are not giving up. They are holding their ground. This, he explains, is the key to the prediction. He takes this information and goes to the court messenger. He does not say, the king will live, or the king will die. That would be foolish. That would be a guess, and a wrong guess would be fatal. Instead, he says, the heavens are in a state of conflict over the king's fate. Saturn, the planet of old age and infirmity, holds a heavy hand. But Venus, the planet of life and hope, is holding its ground. The king's life is not in the stars alone. It is in his will to live. He can survive this, but only with a fight. The heavens are watching to see which side prevails. It is a masterful piece of prognostication. He has given a prediction that is both truthful and safe. It acknowledges the king's serious condition while also giving him a chance to recover. It places the ultimate responsibility on the king himself rather than on the stars. It is a prediction designed to give the king hope and a reason to fight. It's a psychological tool as much as an astrological one. Historians still argue whether medieval rulers genuinely believe these astrological predictions or if they simply used them to justify their own decisions. Did the king's court truly believe that Alaric's words held the secret to the king's health? Or did they simply use the prediction as a way to rally support and give the king a moral boost? You're beginning to understand that it's probably a bit of both. The belief in the stars was real, but so was the political maneuvering. And Alaric, you're starting to realize, is a master of both. The king, inspired by Alaric's prediction, rallies. He does not recover fully, but he holds on, fighting against the slow, creeping hand of Saturn. This renewed hope solidifies Alaric's reputation as a master, a man who doesn't just read the stars but can, with his words, influence the very course of events. But the strain of the journey and the immense pressure of the king's prognostication have taken their toll on your master. One day, you find him in his study, not looking at the sky, but simply staring at his own hands, which are trembling slightly. The sky, he whispers, his voice frail, is a heavy book to read. He knows his time is coming to an end. He is an old man, and his body, like the king's, is succumbing to the weight of the years. He has one last lesson for you, his final piece of wisdom. He gathers you in the study and lays out all his charts and notebooks. He points to them all, the astrolabe, the wind vane, the strange nebulometer you've come to rely on. All of this, he says, is just an echo, a whisper of what is truly important. He then takes you outside, not to a high hill or a field, but to a small, quiet stream that runs behind his cottage. He tells you to look at the water, at the way the light dances on its surface, at the way the wind makes ripples. He tells you that this, too, is a story. The water tells a story of the rain that fed it, the soil it has passed through, the trees it has nourished. The ripples tell a story of the wind, where it came from, and how strong it is. He tells you that you're true. Apprenticeship was never just about the clouds. It was about learning to see the world as a book of signs, to read the story that is being written all around you. This is a mainstream historical fact of the era. Many medieval scholars believed in a concept known as the Book of Nature, a belief that God's creation, the natural world, was a text that could be read and interpreted to understand his will. They saw signs and symbols in everything, from the flight of a bird to the growth of a plant. Your master's quirky tidbit is the way he applies this concept to the most ephemeral of things, the clouds. He sees them not just as celestial signs, but as part of this larger, earthly tapestry of meaning that he then tells you something that you will carry with you for the rest of your life. The clouds, he says, his voice now a mere whisper, are not about predicting the future. The future is an arrow shot in the dark. We cannot see where it lands. But the clouds are about understanding the present. They tell us what is happening now. They tell us the mood of the heavens, the heart of the world, the feel of the wind. And if you can truly understand the present, you can be ready for whatever the future brings. The clouds are not a prophecy, boy. They are a preparation. Historians still argue whether medieval astrologers, in their private moments, truly believed in their ability to predict the future, or if they were, in fact, more concerned with understanding the present moment, using their craft as a way of organizing and interpreting the world around them. Was it a form of primitive science, or a form of profound philosophy? You are beginning to suspect it was the latter. Alaric dies peacefully a few days later, in his bed, the window open to the sky. The last thing he said to you was, "Look at the clouds, my boy. They are not saying goodbye. They are saying, to be continued." His final lesson was about continuity, about the endless, flowing story of the world. And as you stand by his grave, a small, simple marker in the village churchyard, you look up at the sky. A few scattered, wispy clouds drift by. You don't see death. You don't see an ending. You see a story still being written. And you, Alaric's apprentice, are now the only one left to read it. You are now the master. The transition is not sudden, but gradual, like the shifting of the seasons. The villagers, who once sought out Alaric, now seek you. They still call you the boy, but they do so with a newfound respect, a quiet recognition that you have inherited not just a cottage and a set of strange tools, but a legacy. The first person to come to you is a young farmer, barely older than you were when you first arrived at Alaric's door. He is worried about his fields. The spring rains have been inconsistent, and he fears a poor crop. He looks at you with the same mix of hope and skepticism you once had for your own master. You take him outside, and you use the skills Alaric taught you. You don't just look at the clouds. You look at the soil. You feel the air. You listen to the sounds of the birds. You see a few small, scattered Venus clouds, a sign of growth, but they are being pushed away by fast-moving Mercury clouds, a sign of change. It's a complicated message. You tell the farmer that the rains will come, but not in a steady, predictable rhythm. They will come in fits and starts, and he will have to be ready to work harder than usual to make sure his fields are properly watered. You have not just given him a prediction, you have given him a piece of advice, a call to action. Your first official act as master is to take on an apprentice of your own. You find a young boy in the village, a curious, quiet child who spends his days staring at the sky. You see in him the same spark that Alaric must have seen in you. You give him your old notebook, now filled with your own sketches and notes, and you hand him a piece of charcoal. Your first job, you tell him, is to simply look. Don't try to read the clouds. Just try to see them. This is a mainstream historical fact of the era. Knowledge was passed down orally, from master to apprentice. There were no universities for cloud reading. It was a craft, a trade, a tradition passed from one generation to the next. The apprentice system was the very bedrock of medieval society, a way of ensuring that skills and wisdom were not lost to the sands of time. Your quirky tidbit is the way you decide to teach your apprentice. Alaric taught you to see the clouds as planetary messengers. You, however, decide to teach your apprentice to see them as a story. You tell him that every cloud is a character. The big, fluffy Jupiter clouds are the kings and queens. The small, quick Mercury clouds are the messengers. The slow, gray Saturn clouds are the old men and women. You are teaching him a poetic, narrative way of understanding the sky, one that is not just about prediction, but about storytelling. You are building on Alaric's legacy, but you are also making it your own. Historians still argue whether the passing of knowledge from master to apprentice was a system designed to preserve a single, pure form of knowledge, or if it was an engine of intellectual innovation, with each new generation adding their own unique insights and interpretations. Did the apprentice simply learn the master's way, or did he take the master's way and build something new? You are doing both. You are a link in a chain, but you are also a new link, forged in your own experiences. You are now the keeper of the flame, the one who carries on the tradition of the cloud reader. You are no longer just a boy. You are a guardian of a peculiar and beautiful craft, a master who knows that the true art is not in the prediction of the future, but in the careful, loving observation of the present. And as you watch your new apprentice, charcoal in hand, looking up at the sky, you feel a deep sense of peace. The story of the clouds and the story of Alaric is not over. It is continuing in a new hand, in a new mind, and under a new sky. Years pass. The apprentice you took on has grown into a young man, a mirror of the journey you once took. You are now the old man in the cottage, your hands gnarled by time, your eyes just as sharp, but your movements slower. The astrolabe has been polished. So many times its brass gleams like a new coin, and the nebulometer's silver surface is etched with the subtle lines of 1,000 observations. Your notebooks are a library of a lifetime, filled with the story of the sky. You are no longer just a cloud reader. You are a living legend, a part of the landscape, as much a fixture of the village as the old stone church and the winding river. You are sitting by the window one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of gold and crimson. Your apprentice, now a master in his own right, is sitting across from you, his own notebook in his hands. He is sketching the clouds, and you can see that he has not just learned your craft, but has added his own insights to it. He has a way of seeing the light, a nuance in his drawings that is all his own. He is no longer just your student. He is your successor. You reflect on your life's work, on the strange and beautiful path you've walked. You remember Alaric, his stern face, his gentle sarcasm, his unwavering belief in the story of the sky. You remember your first successful prediction, the feeling of magic and power, and the humbling realization that a man's life is as much about luck as it is about skill. You think of Brother Thomas, the man of numbers, and you wonder if he ever looked at a cloud and saw more than just water vapor. You think of the king, and you wonder if he ever knew that his life was a fight being waged in the heavens, a struggle between Saturn and Venus. This is a mainstream historical fact of the era. The concept of legacy, of a life's work being carried on by a successor, was a core tenet of the medieval world. A master's greatest accomplishment was not his own work, but the quality of the apprentice he left behind to carry on his craft. The idea of a personal legacy was tied to the continuation of a tradition. Your quirky tidbit is the way you have come to view the very nature of your craft. You no longer see it as a system of prediction or even a form of philosophy. You see it as a form of poetry. You are a poet of the heavens, a man who reads the fleeting, ephemeral poems written in the clouds. You no longer try to tell people what will happen. You tell them what is happening, and you give them the words to understand it. You tell them that the low, gray cloud is not a sign of a storm, but a sign of a heavy heart. You tell them that the high, white cloud is not a sign of clear weather, but a sign of a hopeful spirit. You are not a prophet. You are a translator. Historians still argue whether medieval astrologers truly saw themselves as scientists, philosophers, or artists. Were they trying to discover the truth, to interpret the truth, or to create a beautiful narrative around the truth? You, sitting by your window, know the answer. You were all three. You were a scientist, in your careful observation. You were a philosopher, in your search for meaning. And you were an artist, in your ability to find beauty in the chaos, to find a story in the sky. As the sun finally dips below the horizon, and the first stars begin to prick through the deepening blue, you feel a deep sense of peace. You have lived a good life. You have honored your master. You have trained a worthy successor. And you have found a way to read the world, to find a story in everything, even in the slow, quiet drift of the clouds. And as the final light fades, you close your eyes, and you feel the weight of a lifetime, a peaceful, contented weight. The weight of a story well told. The fire in the hearth is a soft, crackling friend, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The cottage is quiet, save for the gentle rustle of old parchments and the steady rhythm of your own breathing. The day has come to a close, and the world outside is settling into a quiet slumber, a silent, dark canvas waiting for the morning's first light. You feel the slow, heavy weight of sleep settling on you, a blanket of peace after a long, full day. The clouds are gone now, but their stories linger, whispering in the corners of the room. You have read the sky, you have lived the story, and now it is time to rest. Let the wind sing its quiet lullaby at the window pane, and let the embers in the hearth be a guide for your dreams. There is nothing left to do now but to close your eyes, to let go of the day, and to ease into the gentle embrace of the night. Sleep now, my friend. Let the stories of the sky become a part of your own, and may your dreams be as beautiful and as quiet as a sky full of stars.